Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here physically in the World Law Congress. In the last edition, I could participate, but only by Zoom because of the COVID. I wish to express my gratitude to the World Law Association for giving me the opportunity to moderate such high-level panel. Let me extend a warm welcome to all the participants, and particularly our distinguished speakers. You are the heart of this event. My name is Lorenzo Tordelli, and I serve as Head of European Cooperation Service at the Italo-Latin American International Organization, IILA. I'll be the moderator of our panel, Anti-Corruption Links to Organized Crime. So the first question is why IILA is participating in the World Law Congress. The theme of this year's World Law Congress is Peace Through Law. And our panel fits into a specific topic, the rule of law worldwide perspective. IILA is strongly committed in the promotion of the rule of law and assisting technically in establishing robust legal frameworks for sustainable growth through international cooperation programs in Latin America. Over time, IILA has developed specific experience in managing justice and security projects in Latin America and in the Caribbean region. A paradigmatic example is El Pacto, the most important European initiative against organized crime across Europe and Latin America. The second question is, why this panel about anti-corruption? First of all, corruption has unfortunately become the main instrument utilized by crime organizations to operate at every political and economic level. Corruption hinders economic progress, distorts fair market competition, and undermines the rule of law. And finally, modern corruption utilizes innovative exploitation methods targeting vulnerability in national legal systems. So, in line with 16 objectives of the 2030 United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development, if our goal is to foster the rule of law, combating corruption, and fortify our national legal system are our imperative duties. How do we face this challenge? This is what we'll be discussing with our panelists, whom I'm very happy to introduce. Giovanni Tartaglia, Polcini, Magistrate from Italy, former chair in 2021 and currently co-chair of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, Deputy Director of El Pacto program, and we have been working together in the first phase of this program. Cecilia Perez from Paraguay, former Minister of Justice and Security, and actually serving at the permanent mission of Paraguay to the Organization of American States. Roberto Tartaglia, Magistrate from Italy, Deputy Chief of the Department for Legal and Legislative Affairs of the Presidency of Council of Ministers of the Italian Republic, former Deputy Chief of Penitentiary Department in Italy, and prosecutor in Palermo, Sicily. So a real expert in organized crime. Despite the surname, Roberto is not related with Giovanni. Better to specify, speaking about corruption. Cline, it's a pleasure to have you here, from the United States Division, Chief Office of Global Programs and Policy, Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. Claudia Escobar Mejia, from Guatemala, former judge and legal specialist on judicial corruption, distinguished distinguished visit professor at the George Mason University, director of Democracy and Anti-Corruption Fellow Program. And last but not least, Christian Verbic from Slovenia, president of Pan-Slovenian Investor and Stakeholder Association. So we can start our panel, and Giovanni, I would like that can you tell us a snapshot of your experience as co-chair of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, and what are the recent developments and new goals set by the group to prevent the fight corruption related to organized crime? Thank you, Giovanni. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you all for your participation, and to my colleagues panelists. I go immediately on the topic, and what I can say that the global threat of corruption needs a new weapon to prevent and a fight against. And the answer is by the experience on 2 directories. The first one is we need to harmonize rules. We need to enhance the global rule of law. The rule of law is exactly the first answer, the power of law to prevent corruption, to harmonize the standard, to reduce distances is the first answer. The second one is improve the technical assistance from countries with more experience in this sector to the others. And these 2 directories, the harmonization of law and the technical assistance at the international level, are the basis of a new science, the science of judicial diplomacy or legal diplomacy. I don't like a definition, I look to the substance. This is the first message. The second message is how to define corruption today, considering the experience we have developed in the multilateral fora, moving from the G20, in particular the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group experience. Corruption today is changed, as Lorenzo said in his presentation. There is not only the one-shot corruption. We have different modalities, more dangerous. In particular, I refer myself to the infiltration of criminal network, illicit financial powers, and mafias and cartels in the public administration through corruption on one hand, and in the legal economy through money laundering on the other hand. This is exactly, at scientific level, the holistic vision about a new form of corruption. And this is a modality to reconstruct corruption from the scientific point of view. But if we consider what is happening in our modern world, we can use the words of the leaders. And in particular, I can recall some decision by, for instance, the President of the United States. He convened 2 times in the last 3 years a summit for democracy. The first one in 2021 and the second one in 2023. And in this summit, speaking about democracy, he obtained the attention of the world on the relations between democracy and corruption. The danger for democracy in the state capture cases, in the kleptocracy, in autocracies, and in particular, the danger for human rights. It is a modern concept to take and to consider related. On one hand, corruption, it was reconstructed in past as an economic crime, and the protection of human rights on the other hand. And this is the real danger today, because through corruption, we have an attack to the human rights, to the fundamental rights, beginning from the freedom. And the last message, that's clarity at international level that we have this new generation of organized crime, and the need to link the experience of Merida Convention on one hand, the Convention Against Corruption in the United Nations environment, and the Palermo Convention on the other hand, the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. It's singular. The two conventions begin in the preambular part saying that the one and the other are concerned about the threat of the link existing between organized crime and corruption. But in the development of the treaty, that are wonderful, there is no so attention in developing this concept with proposals, and probably we have this great chance on one hand, a responsibility on the other hand, to try to do something, to go ahead and clarify what are the possibilities we have for future. I close this first intervention with one key message. It is evident that there is something that we have not done in these last 20 years. And we have to consider for the future how to involve other actors in this particular activity. And I refer myself to private sector, civil society, academia, media, and also professionals, also the lawyers and law firms, because this kind of challenges needs new answers, and a multi-stakeholder approach I prefer, and my friends perfectly know another definition, the multi-shareholder approach against this kind of corruption, because the stakeholder concept give me the idea of a counterpart. When we use stakeholder term in English language, I prefer shareholder to clarify that we have to construct, to build together a new message to prevent and fight against corruption. And thank you for this very interesting question, Lorenzo.
No, thank you very much, Giovanni. And you said that we need new weapons to fight against corruption. So I would like to ask to Roberto if can you give a view of the Italian legislation aiming to fight organized crime, including related corruption, speaking about weapons, and from your perspective, what could be implemented, what could be do different to fight corruption?
Thank you, Lorenzo, for your question. I'll try to speak about Italian experience in this field. It's not easy to summarize this subject in a short time because, without doubt, Italy has a great experience built up also with human sacrifices, also with many mistakes, and I think that it was also from these mistakes that we were able to learn more and to improve. And I like to say that at the end of this path, Italy, our country, in this moment, even in the public imagination, could be defined not longer as the country of mafia, the country of organized crime, but as the capital of the culture of fighting and preventing organized crime. There would be a lot of things to say, starting by what I consider the minimum requirement of a serious anti-mafia action, namely the existence of a set of rules, of criminal rules and procedural rules that allow the investigation, the prosecution, and if there are conditions, the conviction of organized crime. 4 points in summary. First one, we have a set of rules that punish as a criminal offense the simple fact of belonging to a mafia association. I'm thinking about the crime that was introduced in Italian legal system in 1982, and it's a crime that punish the leaders, the organizers, the participants in mafia association. Second point, we have the rules that penalize every kind of operational approach to the mafia association, even if a person is not part of the mafia association. No? I'm thinking about the crime of complicity of assisting members of mafia association. Third point, we have a set of rules about the crimes that mafia usually commit, and these crimes are aggravated when a member of mafia commit them. For example, drug trafficking, money laundering, loan sharking, the corruption as well. And the last point is important for corruption crime, a set of procedural rules that are special rules that allow more effective investigation, for example, a more effective and a broader duration of wiretapping, a broader duration of secrecy of investigation, a special regulation of pre-trial detention, for example. And it's important because these rules were born about mafia crimes, and on the basis of the result of the effectiveness of these rules, we did extend these rules to mafia crimes. But everyone involved in the field of anti-mafia action, I like public prosecutor, after as deputy chief of penitentiary of Italy, and now in my charge currently, no? Everyone involved in this field knows that it's a key, a legal system or rules. It's key, it's very important, but it's not enough, because more is needed, no? For a full and lasting effect. I'd like briefly speak about other two tools. The first one, the patrimonial prevention. The second one, the penitentiary special system of these crimes. Only few words. The third one, Giovanni spoke about the international cooperation. After I think we can come back to speak about this matter. Patrimonial prevention. When I worked as a public prosecutor in Palermo office, Palermo is the city of Italy where, unfortunately, Cosa Nostra, Italian mafia, was born. It was established and ensured that every investigation, every anti-mafia investigation, started with a branch investigating people and another simultaneous branch investigating the assets of those people, because the assumption is very simple. Mafia acts for a purpose of economic enrichment, and every mobster has a patrimony, an heritage that we have to find, we have to seize, if there are conditions we have to confiscate. So this is a constant today, but it was not in the past. When I go to Italian university for lecturing, for example, I like to put together two quotes. The first one is a quote of Giovanni Falcone. I hope you know Giovanni Falcone. He's an Italian hero, a brave public prosecutor that was killed by Cosa Nostra in 1992 with his wife, with his escort. No? In a congress in the city of Venice in 1985, he spoke about the patrimonial prevention. He told that we are overlooking patrimonial prevention. It has become mandatory patrimonial prevention. After 20 years from this Congress of Giovanni Falcone, I'd like to quote this sentence from a mob that Palermo Prosecutor Office, when I worked during an investigation by Palermo Prosecutor Office that we called Old Bridge, because led to almost 100 persons arrested in Italy and United States. We intercepted a mafia member, a mobster, that had fled Italy and tried to convince a colleague, another mob, to follow him with these words that we intercepted. It's enough to be investigated in Italy for a mafia association, and the assets will be immediately seized. There is nothing worse than confiscation of assets. So the best thing to do, listen to me, is to leave. Come here, come here. 20 years after Giovanni Falcone intervention, no? So what was changed? It's difficult in a little time, but we started from a traditional confiscation regulation with a lot of limitation. The first one, it was an optional confiscation. The public prosecutor decides case by case if to confiscate or not. The judge decides case by case. And we have introduced a series of kinds of mandatory, of compulsory confiscation. The first limitation. The second limitation, very important, is about the object of the traditional confiscation, because it was about only the things that have a relationship of a direct derivation from the crime that's committed. But you know, it's an archaic example of patrimonial prevention, because it does take into account the new technique of money laundering. No? It's very difficult to find in the patrimony of a mobster the asset that derived directly from the crime committed. So we have introduced a lot of special confiscation with a special object. For example, the confiscation of equivalent. I know that a crime was committed. I don't find the asset that directly derived from the crime, but in the heritage of the convicted, I could find other assets, even if of lawful origin, and I can confiscate them with only one limit. I can't exceed the economic value of what I would have confiscated with traditional confiscate, for example, the price, the proceeds of the crime. No, I'm confiscating a value. The same, I have no time, the same is about the confiscation of disproportion. Here the assumption is that the judge makes a comparison between the legal income of the person convicted for a lot of crimes and his legal income, for example. And so the prevention confiscation, that's the main form of no conviction-based confiscation in Italy. Only to finish, the same kinds of special confiscation we introduced about mafia crimes was extended to corruption crimes. It's the same I said before, on the basis of the result and on the basis of the assumption. The assumption is that mafia crimes and corruption crimes are often the two sides of the same coin. I have no time to speak about penitentiary. Only one last thing. I don't speak about the penitentiary system only of organized crime. But there is one common tool between mafia crimes and corruption crime in the special penitentiary system, the regulation of prison benefits, for example. We, with Giovanni Falcone, introduced the rule that a mafia convicted person can get the prison benefits if he doesn't cooperate with the justice, if he doesn't provide useful information about his patrimony, about how the association, the criminal association works. In the past, we have extended the same rule to corruption crime, and it was another way to cope with these crimes that are two sides of the same coin. Thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you very much. And if I have to summarize, and speaking about weapons, probably special confiscation is one of the best weapons that we have regarding organized crime and corruption. And you said also that we did many mistakes to improve our legislation. And I think it's really interesting because in our program with Latin America, we try to facilitate the interchange of experience to avoid this mistake. And I'm very happy to have here the Chief Anti-Drugs Prosecutor of Spain, Rosa Moran, because we collaborate in different European projects as Copolat, another one. So thank you. And I saw that we have the interpretation also. If so, Cecilia, if you want to speak Spanish, I think that you could speak Spanish. But I would like to ask you that, having been the Minister for Justice and then in Security in Paraguay, if you could connect the dots for us and speak us about how organized crime and corruption are linked in your country based on your experience. Thank you, Cecilia.
Okay, thank you so much. Es un placer para mí estar aquí. Espero no poder, no tener que decir ninguna palabra en guaraní. Mi país es bilingüe y tenemos mucha vinculación con el Brasil, que es con el que hoy estamos sintiendo el mayor efecto del crimen organizado. Nosotros tenemos dos grupos importantes que, sin temor a equívocos, podemos decir que son los más fuertes en Sudamérica en este momento. El principal es el Primer Comando Capital, el nombre en portugués es o Primeiro Comando da Capital, PCC por sus siglas, y el otro es el Comando Vermelho, que se distribuyen el tráfico de drogas y de armas en el Brasil en dos partes, pero en Paraguay el más fuerte es el PCC. En los últimos episodios, procedimientos importantes, hemos descubierto que el Paraguay se convirtió en un país colaborador, intensamente colaborador del tráfico de drogas, en cooperación no solamente con el PCC, sino distribuyendo la droga, la cocaína principalmente de Perú, Colombia y Bolivia a través de la hidrovía con salidas a Europa. Y todo esto es posible, este avance del crimen organizado transnacional es posible por la corrupción estatal. Nosotros no podemos hablar del avance del crimen organizado en Paraguay sin hablar de la infiltración y la contaminación dentro de los organismos del Estado. Nosotros sabemos lo que hace el crimen organizado. El crimen organizado está frente nuestro, nosotros estamos del otro lado. El problema no está con el crimen organizado enfrente. Decimos vulgarmente, sabemos lo que va a hacer el bandido, el delincuente. Lo que no sabemos es qué va a hacer el oficial de policía, el agente penitenciario, el fiscal, el juez, el funcionario del sistema estatal financiero para permitir que el crimen organizado avance. Lamentablemente, como veníamos advirtiendo de estas conexiones, la semana pasada en mi país fueron detenidos 2 soldados, que si vamos a hablar de rule of law, podemos decir que presuntamente pertenecen a la mafia italiana calabresa, la 'Ndrangheta, pero sabemos que vienen operando de una manera de una multinacional del crimen, subcontratando o distribuyéndose funciones con grupos locales que han funcionado como subcontratistas en cuanto a la distribución y el tráfico de la cocaína que llega a Europa. Y en ese sentido, en Paraguay el problema principal y por qué es importante hablar del PCC, porque el PCC tiene su nacimiento en el sistema penitenciario y es donde nace a partir de la ausencia y de la corrupción del Estado, donde en las prisiones el Estado está ausente y en las prisiones de Paraguay, en un sistema colapsado hoy, los funcionarios se han convertido en el brazo ejecutor más allá de los muros del crimen organizado. E increíblemente tenemos un enfrentamiento con un grupo local que en el afán de oponerse al PCC finalmente termina replicando su modus operandi, pero invocando inclusive símbolos nacionalistas y trayendo la historia de la guerra de la Triple Alianza en la figura del PCC como un grupo del crimen organizado brasilero. Tal es así que este grupo local tiene su fortaleza en el sistema penitenciario, que es conocido como el clan Rotella por el apellido de uno de los líderes o del líder principal. Y en este esquema los funcionarios son parte de la organización. ¿Y por qué creemos que es importante poner sobre la mesa el problema de la corrupción? Porque tienen en común grupos tan fuertes el nacimiento en el sistema penitenciario. El clan Rotella se fortalece, el PCC nace con un esquema de códigos que hasta parecen moralmente establecidos, con un fin positivo, buscando luchar contra el Estado por la violación de los derechos humanos de las personas privadas de libertad de acuerdo a las condiciones en las cuales se encuentran. Entonces no podemos decir que el crimen organizado no avanza, que avanza por otros motivos que no sea por la corrupción estatal. En este esquema, convencidos de que el trabajo más allá de la tecnología debe ser la apuesta al talento humano, porque los aparatos los manipulan los seres humanos. Es apostar a la tecnología conjuntamente con el personal. En Paraguay nosotros tenemos que comenzar de cero, porque el sistema está tan corrupto y colapsado que trabajar con capacitación o formación del personal en las personas que hoy están trabajando contaminadas en el sistema penitenciario es entregarle nuestras herramientas de lucha al crimen organizado. En ese sentido, apostamos en la cooperación internacional al trabajo del talento humano, la formación de un perfil importante de personas con vocación, porque aquí podemos hablar de muchos factores que intervienen con la corrupción de los funcionarios a nivel estatal. Puede ser uno de ellos un mal salario, pero se ha demostrado que personas que ganan lo mismo han tenido actitudes heroicas y lamentablemente tengo que traer sobre la mesa la figura de un compañero y amigo que hoy ya no está entre nosotros, que fue el fiscal Marcelo Pecci, asesinado en su luna de miel. Era el fiscal especializado en crimen organizado en Paraguay y fue asesinado en su luna de miel en Colombia frente a su esposa embarazada hace un año, poco más de un año. Entonces podemos ver que hay fiscales que sí hacen su trabajo y que el salario bajo o insuficiente no es el motivo principal de la corrupción contra la capacidad financiera que pueden tener los grupos del crimen organizado y en ese sentido hemos trabajado y apostado en todo este tiempo y esperamos que esto no crezca más allá y pueda ser contenido.
Muchísimas gracias, Cecilia. Como han podido ver, Cecilia es una mujer de muchísimo coraje. Habló de corrupción de Estado, del tema del crimen organizado en su país. Yo tuve el privilegio de trabajar con Cecilia, que ya adelantó hace 6 años la relación entre PCC, que es ese grupo criminal brasileño de los cuales nadie hablaba o tenía el coraje de hablar hace 6 años, y de la relación con la 'ndrangheta, que es la mafia más poderosa que tenemos actualmente en Italia. Entonces, con gran coraje trabajado en esto, nos ayudó muchísimo en nuestro programa, también en ámbito penitenciario. Gracias a ella, gracias a Paraguay, logramos también tener resultados importantes en la creación de redes de cooperación entre Administración Penitenciaria Europea y entre Administración Penitenciaria Latinoamericanas, que era algo que no existía. Y entonces creo que tengo que darle la gracia y también ser testigo que efectivamente cuando hay vocación y se hace bien el propio trabajo con vocación, también se logran resultados importantes. Entonces creo que eso es algo importante por cada uno de nosotros. Claudia, gracias de estar aquí. Claudia también, otra mujer que dedicó su vida a la lucha a la corrupción y en su país y también en otros países. Y me gustaría que nos contara cómo la criminalidad organizada penetra, infiltra las instituciones de la justicia en Centroamérica. Muchas gracias, Claudia.
Bueno, gracias Lorenzo por la invitación y por compartir este panel con ustedes. Ha sido realmente muy ilustrativo escuchar a Cecilia contar la experiencia en Paraguay. Yo quiero compartirles que fui jueza durante 10 años en Guatemala y esto me permitió entender cómo funciona la corrupción dentro de las instituciones de justicia. Quiero hacer énfasis en que el crimen organizado necesita de las instituciones de justicia para poder operar, para poder lograr impunidad para los crímenes que comete. Voy a hablar de una región del continente que es la región de Centroamérica, donde los países centroamericanos están enfrentando enormes desafíos de la influencia del crimen organizado. El crimen organizado internacional ha encontrado una tierra fértil en la región. Son todos países post-conflicto que tuvieron largas guerras civiles durante los años 70 y 90. Luego se firmaron los acuerdos de paz, pero quedó un legado de impunidad, un legado de violencia, de inseguridad y también de inequidad. Esto además se suma a unas organizaciones de justicia débiles que aunque han tratado de fortalecerse, ha sido difícil porque no tienen la capacidad de confrontar a redes que fomentan la corrupción. La corrupción es un arma que utilizan quienes buscan debilitar las instituciones para poder actuar sin consecuencias. Y no solo es el crimen organizado, también es los grupos políticos, políticos que se enriquecen después de tener una función pública, también los militares que combatieron durante la guerra y algunos grupos empresariales que están acostumbrados a actuar de manera que no cumplen la ley porque obtienen beneficios. Entonces, cuando las instituciones de justicia, las cortes, las oficinas de los fiscales generales no son independientes y obedecen a intereses de grupos sectoriales, todos los ciudadanos están en riesgo porque ningún derecho va a ser respetado cuando se pierde la independencia de los jueces. Ya nos relataban acá también cómo en los años 90 el fiscal Falcone y otro grupo iniciaron un movimiento en contra de las mafias con el Mani Puliti, de confrontarse con estos grupos y los riesgos que enfrentaron fueron muy altos. El costo fue muy alto porque esta guerra contra el crimen organizado es realmente una lucha asimétrica. Entonces quiero concluir estas primeras reflexiones pensando en qué esfuerzos internacionales podemos hacer, porque lo que pasa en un país pequeño como puede ser Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Paraguay, tiene un efecto en el resto de países de la región. El crimen transnacional no opera solamente en estados pequeños, opera a nivel internacional y se sirve de esas conexiones y de lo que logra con obtener impunidad para atacar otros países. Entonces es importante que busquemos esfuerzos regionales, esfuerzos internacionales para poder combatir ese crimen organizado en la región.
Muchísimas gracias, Claudia. Efectivamente, sí, me golpeó este punto, ¿no? De que a veces los países más pequeños, que a veces son, no sé, un poco aislados o olvidados, son los sobre los cuales aún más se tiene que invertir para evitar esta expansión de la criminalidad organizada y de la corrupción. Christian, how are you? Giovanni told us about the importance to involve new actors in the fight against corruption. And as the president of the Pan-Slovenian Investor and Stakeholder Association, I would like to know, in your opinion, what is the role of the private sector in the fight against corruption and organized crime, and what your association is doing to fight this phenomenon.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Hello, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Regarding the question, it's definitely, first of all, what I would have to say, I'm representing European Federation of Investors and Financial Services Users that brings together close to 5 million of individual investors in Europe. But I'm also president of Slovenian, covering Croatia as well, association. So we are definitely dealing on a daily basis with corruption in a matter of direct companies, listed companies, whatever questions might be with the takeovers, squeeze outs, and so on. But definitely, I mean, since I'm very delighted and honored to be here with the colleagues that have been really presenting very, very concrete examples of corruption in different states, from Peru, okay, Italy, as well as maybe world most known Sicilian mafia style. And so on. But I would like maybe to change a little bit from what I have prepared for this event, go from the basic philosophical question, what really corruption is. So this is, let's say, Socrates, maybe 2,500 years ago, would ask, oh, okay, but what really corruption is? So I would say that nowadays, especially in the Western society, we are really dealing with systemical corruption. So it's on the highest possible basis of decision makers from the political parties that are by itself, let's say, considering United States and also other cases, with the parties that are financed by, let's say, business, directly from business, or let's say, to make it maybe a little bit softer, from lobbies, from the ones, let's say in European Union, there in Brussels, you have hundreds of thousands of lobbyists, of companies that are dealing with what? To make the decision maker process on a higher possible level in the way how they would like it through their particular interest. And this is not, in most of the times, really the interest of the people or the masses or the interest of really citizens. So we have here really significant general questions about, okay, I'm very glad we are living in democracy. But on the other side, this democracy by its substance is corrupted, right? Because if you go to the system of political parties, of the decision makers, of the members of the parliament, on all the levels and degrees, and the governments and the ministers, what do you find out? They are under the influence of very, very powerful, and especially regarding business and money, influence. Okay, and then if we go to the level of course, juristic system and judges and so on, okay, you can see on daily basis, you can see this, that judges are having a vacation together with the ones that tomorrow or already are in the process of certain very, very significant matter. And it's all this. Let's go to media. Again, media are also corrupted in many, many cases, because what they report in such a particular cases, okay, this is something that becomes very normal. It's not really normal. This is a serious problem for a whole of our society. And okay, let me go and conclude with this. I have been last 3 months traveling around the world for 2 times. So I came over here from San Francisco and from LA. What happened to this beautiful city of San Francisco? In the center of city, you have drugs in each and every step, and the crime and so on. And then I go to LA, and the taxi driver is saying me, yeah, I mean, it would be great to have a subway here as well, working like maybe in Paris or here in New York. But, you know, automotive industry, tires and sellers of the automobiles, they're against it. I mean, they are lobbying. So we have not subway and the public transport like we would like to have. And there are, I mean, you need hours to go from one part of town to another part of town, because everyone is sitting there majorly on his own, and he is in his own car. So what it means? Who put these people in a, let's say, city councils or mayors and so on places that make decisions like this? Please excuse me, but I believe that this is also the point we should discuss. And let me just go really to a conclusion. I'm so sorry that the initiative about having an international court, anti-corruption international court, is not a topic that was supposed to be on this event, the great event, congratulations, because this would really be something important, and I hope, let's go on with this initiative to make international anti-corruption court. And maybe, sorry, Lorenzo, I'm too long already, but if it helps, I would like to propose, let's have this court in Slovenia, or let's have it in Italy, or let's have it in maybe Austria. Let's have it in some place that it's more or less in the border between East and West. Because you have, this is something, maybe just idea for people over here listening, different concepts of what is corruption. Because corruption in the West means, okay, you give some money and you get something for it. On the East, let's say in place in Turkey, it's Turkish word bakshish. It means significantly different concept. Okay, you do something because you did it, but you get bakshish, you get paid afterwards if you did it good. So it's really significantly different concept. Okay, so maybe because of Italy, as known as Sicily, known as a place of mafia and corruption, let's say just late Silvio Berlusconi as a media magnate who became then really powerful and influential politician and so on. This is one of the signs what we are seeing also here in U.S. and what we are seeing here in the West. But I believe that it was enough for me and for my contribution to this event. And thank you very much for listening to me, maybe for some other perspective and point of view.
No, thank you very much for your perspective. And speaking about this systemical corruption, you also speak about probably another theme. So I mean, we need to improve our legislation, but probably we need to improve also our values, and we have to ask what it is necessary to do to fight this systemic corruption. But we are going to try to do something in this aspect, and to propose the Italy or Slovenia to have the anti-corruption international court. And thank you. And now, last but not least, we turn to our sixth panelist, Christine, and as the division chief at the Office of Global Programs and Policy, Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, could you tell us what action the United States is taking in the fight against transnational organized crime and corruption? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo, for that introduction and for the ability to participate as part of this panel. I think before I answer your question, I did want to highlight at the outset that the global community does have a North Star when it comes to fighting corruption, and that is the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and the UN Convention Against Corruption. So while there may be differences in how countries look at issues around corruption, we have a guiding framework which provides requirements that countries must, when they sign on to the treaty, must legally carry forward. And I think that does provide a framework. There are gaps in implementation, but I think certainly we have the global standards there in place to move forward. As you mentioned, my bureau, the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs at the State Department, we've really long recognized the linkages between organized crime and corruption. And as other speakers have so eloquently put it, really the effects that it places not just on ordinary citizens, but as a threat to good governance and to democracy. And so we have adopted a wide range of tools, including technical assistance, multilateral and bilateral diplomatic engagement, and accountability tools. These are things like visa restrictions and sanctions to achieve our mission. INL is a major provider of technical assistance. We actually manage the U.S. government's largest non-military security account with programs in over 90 countries. And these are really programs aimed at strengthening the criminal justice capacity of states and helping them implement the commitments enshrined within the UNCAC and the UNTOC, as well as helping them build and reform, sustain competent and legitimate criminal justice systems to combat a wide array of tools. We also have programming that aims to support, defend, and protect investigative journalists, and other civil society actors, because we really cannot fight corruption or transnational organized crime on our own. So we're also endeavoring to empower investigative journalists so that they can identify and expose corruption cases across sectors, as well as to help them network and amplify their work, and even in some cases to help strengthen those relationships between journalists and law enforcement, where information sharing may help in terms of corruption cases. I also want to take a step back and underline that the Biden-Harris administration has really established the fight against corruption as a core national security priority. So for the first time, the United States released in December 2021 a U.S. strategy on countering corruption. So it really outlines the approach that we're taking globally and domestically to respond to corruption and related crimes. And importantly, it stresses the critical role of engagement between the governmental and the non-governmental partners in our efforts to combat corruption. And it also recognized the linkages with organized crime and commits us to tackling those linkages through disrupting the networks, tracking illicit financial flows, following the money, and of course improving information sharing, especially amongst our law enforcement partners. Giovanni also mentioned President Biden's Summit for Democracy initiative, and we're carrying forward a number of important initiatives that get at the heart of corruption and transnational organized crime. Of note, the United States is co-leading a financial transparency and integrity cohort that's bringing together both governments and outside stakeholders to look at a range of key issues. So everything on like how do we tackle corruption enablers to let's look at procurement and reform and see how we can improve there. We also have launched a Democracies Against Safe Havens initiative, which looks at coordinating accountability tools with other partners. So how can we coordinate our sanctions actions, for example, to really amplify the effect of those? Speaking of sanctions and accountability actions, I want to highlight one tool in particular. This is the U.S. Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. So it authorizes the use of financial sanctions and visa restrictions on persons determined, among other things, to be responsible for or complicit in or to have directly or indirectly engaged in serious human rights abuses or corrupt acts anywhere in the world. So since 2017, we've designated over 600 individuals and entities worldwide pursuant to Global Magnitsky. And this is complemented by another tool that actually my bureau manages. It's the corruption prong of what we call Section 7031C of the Annual Appropriations Act. And that gives the Secretary of State authority to designate current or former public officials for significant corruption, thereby making them and their immediate family members generally ineligible for entry into the United States. It's a visa restriction, and we can make those public. So together, these designations have really had a significant impact, including prompting other governments to take action against those designees. For the last part of my remarks, I just wanted to take a moment to focus on multilateral engagement. I started at the top by mentioning the Convention Against Corruption. And in December, from December 11th through 15th, the United States will serve as the host of the Conference of the States Parties. That is the governance body for the UNCAC. It's the first time that the United States will host the conference, and really it's been a decade, I think, since it was in the Western Hemisphere when Panama hosted in 2023. And we're really looking at this as an opportunity, again, to bring together governments with civil society stakeholders. We're going to have a series of pre-conference events, including a civil society forum on anti-corruption, where we will have a series of panels to really look at the new anti-corruption realities. And building off of our discussions here, we will have one on the linkages between organized crime and corruption. So I wanted to just highlight that opportunity. It's another way that we can engage and find targeted ways that we can carry forward our work. But back to you, Lorenzo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And we hope to can participate in Atlanta in the anti-corruption conference that the United States will be host. And Now let's move into a quick second round on question and answer. Since we all agreed that the World Law Congress this edition is centered around the idea of peace through law and the necessity of international cooperation to achieve it, I would like to ask to Roberto, in terms of international cooperation, what are the best tools to combat organized crime, and if these tools are still effective, in your opinion?
Thank you, Lorenzo. I think that for many years until now, it would be naive, it would be unthinkable to fight the organized crime and corruption while remaining into the borders of one's own country, no? To keep on thinking about fighting against organized crime without hitting, without investigating the relationship also in different countries, in different continents that organized crime can create, it will be a losing war. I'm sure, and we all think about this. So the international cooperation is key. Another time more, Giovanni Falcone comes to my mind because I said it before. He had a lot of qualities, but one of these summed all them up: the foresight, the capacity to see before anyone else the perspective, the strategy, you know, the foresight. So he was also a pioneer of international cooperation. Let's think that his last public speech was only 15 days before that he was killed by Cosa Nostra. The last public speech, because he was the deputy of Italian delegation in the first session of the Commission of United Nations on Criminal Justice, when he talked about the necessity to a high political level to create, to lay down an instrument, a tool of international cooperation. He spoke about an investigation, a famous investigation that we called Pizza Connection. I don't know if you remember, no? Another international and transnational investigation. A little quote with a little emotion of this quote of Giovanni Falcone when he was deputy of Italian delegation 15 days before he was killed. He said, "The mafia seen through this trial seemed to me as a huge, limitless, unexplored world. A great reality to be discovered was locked up in the trial papers. To get to the bottom, I used tools that already existed, but few had used enough. An example, is it enough to investigate in Palermo, in Sicily, in Italy? If the police here sees a shipment of drugs for the United States, I wondered, why not go to the United States to study the side effects of that successful operation?" So it started a path that led to Palermo Convention against the transnational crime. Giovanni spoke about this key instrument. It's very important because it's the most important instrument against the transnational crime. It has a character of universality due to the very high number of states that adhered to this convention, 190, I think, no? And it's very important because we have an incriminating obligation for the crime association, for corruption, for money laundering, for example, a set of rules about police cooperation, judicial cooperation, about the role, the paper of civil society in this field. This convention, this instrument, had a regular application, because we have countries that made a very intensive use of it. For example, United States, with a number of, I think, over 600 requests to 100 other countries. But we have also other countries that use this instrument in a very limited way. But what I'd like to stress in this moment, and now currently, we have a precious opportunity because it was established the review mechanism. It's a peer review tool that we are, I am part of the Italian commission of this peer review tool. So it's a essential instrument to analyze the legislation of the 190 states that adhered to this convention, to identify the gaps, to promote the judicial reform, and to update the convention. So I think it would be very important to give the importance to this mechanism, the importance that it deserves in this moment.
Thank you, Roberto. Roberto told us about the importance of the peer review tools, mechanisms of the Palermo Convention. And Giovanni, I would like to ask you if you can explain how programs like El Patto support the international cooperation in struggle against corruption and organized crime, and if this program could be able to help the peer review mechanism.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And very quickly, the peer review mechanism concludes the report on a country through recommendations. The idea is to identify, in the ANCAC as in the UNTOC, what are the weaknesses or the distance from the standards of the country, and recommend to try to reduce and to reach these standards. And the response, the answer by technical assistance is very simple. We have a methodology. We go to analyze with the needs assessment stage in the co-ownership with the interested country, what are the needs, what are the real emergencies and priorities, and we propose to solve this necessity through 4 different pillars of action. The first one is the capacity building, capability, and we consider the training one of the most important tools to reduce distances between the capacity of different countries, so low public officials, law enforcement public officials. But sometimes the capability is not enough. We need to do something more, because we have to introduce stronger institutions and stronger organizational institutions reforms. And we call this second step institutional building. It's different from the capacity building one. But sometimes this second step is only second part of the intervention. We need also to modernize the rules and the legal framework. It's key. So we have the third pillar is the law building. And the 3 pillars I have mentioned, capacity, institutional, and law building, have to be accompanied by a 4th, is the last but the most important one, the consensus building. Because of the fact that we have politic changes, and sometimes we go in a country proposing something to the current government, and then after 3 years, 4 years, you have a new government, and you go through new ideas and reforms. And so you can have distances again from the standards. And we can avoid this, creating the basis for the consensus at value level on our proposal. So the 4th pillar is the consensus building one. The Programma El Pacto is a paradigm program. It's not the only program we have, But I can say in my experience with my white hair, it was a successful program because changed some situation at country level. It's a 60 countries program because we have 27 countries from European Union and 33 from Latin American and Caribbean region. But let's provide for this second round with 1 minute on the definitions and what is corruption today, because I was in particular called to say something by the intervention of Christian on the systemical corruption. In particular, we have identified what's corruption today, but the definition we use are just a little bit different. The first one is the liquid corruption. You all know that Zygmunt Bauman, one of the most important sociologists modern, said that the society, modern society, is liquid. Exactly at the same time, corruption became liquid and is the instrument to infiltrate like a liquid the solid, and the solid is our society, whole the society. The more society is hard and cohesive, and the less corruption can infiltrate society. So we have the first definition is liquid corruption. The second is the strategic corruption. Also Christian recorded in his intervention. Because today we have sometimes entities programming corruption as the instrument of their activities. We have international companies in history I can mention because it's public and it's officially over the world knew the Odebrecht case. The Odebrecht was a company at time involved in practice of corruption with the same modality in different countries, and this is an example of strategy. And so we can speak about strategic corruption. The last one, and I close my intervention, is very new one, the symbiotic corruption, because we are very difficult in some scenarios to identify what are the differences between corruptors and corrupted people and entities. And it's a singular, but believe me, it's not so rare in our globe today. And sometimes also we have difficulty on identify the offenses to describe this kind of human behavior, and there is so difficulty to understand how it is possible, but it happens. And so we have a very simple definition of corruption today. You have mentioned the systemical, no? Considering the society as a whole and with also strong representation of reality. But the science identified in the last 10 years these three, one, the liquid, the strategic, and the symbiotic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. Also about this definition of corruption. And Cecilia, Giovanni nos ha hablado de estos 4 pilares de la asistencia técnica en materia de cooperación internacional, particular del programa El Pacto. Entonces te quería preguntar, en tu experiencia también cuando estaba como ministra, cómo y si efectivamente estos programas te han apoyado y qué se podría mejorar, qué se podría hacer para que puedan apoyar aún más.
Efectivamente, cooperamos con varios programas. El programa principal fue el Pacto. Siempre me gusta señalar, no en detrimento de otras cooperaciones, pero sí la característica principal del cuarto pilar del que hablaba Giovanni, que es del consenso. Y no en el sentido político del consenso, de la costumbre que tenemos en América Latina de cambiar de gobierno y comenzar todo de cero, porque el gobierno que se fue es el que perdió las elecciones, entonces tenemos que echar por tierra todo lo que se hizo, sino en la forma de ser, siendo un programa europeo, de adecuarse a las necesidades de cada país latinoamericano, que a diferencia de otras cooperaciones se establecen de una manera determinada y que uno tiene como que aceptar los términos de esa cooperación. Y creo que esa fue la clave, que con nosotros adecuar no solamente la fundación o la creación de la primera academia penitenciaria del Paraguay, que es uno de los pilares importantes de la reforma, con todos los puntos que la reforma muestra en el trabajo realizado con el pacto, de que vamos a tener como obstáculos, porque el peor enemigo y el primer enemigo de la reforma siempre va a ser el sistema existente. En cualquier sistema de reforma o de transformación, sobre todo en el ámbito del primer nivel con relación al crimen organizado, de los operadores del sistema de justicia, del sistema de seguridad, podemos ver que los primeros que se oponen son los que están trabajando en el sistema descompuesto, colapsado, y la primera excusa que se utiliza es que es un enlatado de otro país, de otra región, y que no va a funcionar en nuestro país. En nuestro caso, cuando venía el trabajo de la cooperación en el sistema penitenciario, creían que nosotros estábamos queriendo imponerles un futuro sistema como el de Holanda o el de Noruega, donde las cárceles están vacías y donde las cosas son diferentes. Sin embargo, nunca funcionó de esta manera el programa, y creo que ese es el pilar del éxito del pacto con América Latina. También creo que gracias a eso pudimos, sin recursos, porque también hay mucha pretensión de que la cooperación internacional sea entregar dinero o recursos financieros. Nunca fueron recursos financieros propiamente de entregar dinero en donación o en préstamo para trabajar e invertir, sino que eran otros recursos que también tienen su efecto, y creo que cualquier cooperante va a querer ver el resultado del dinero que está invirtiendo o de la capacidad técnica que está invirtiendo, viéndolo desde el punto de vista de finanzas del Estado. Logramos reformas importantes, micro reformas, trabajando con el sistema de justicia, con el sistema policial y de los fiscales, tocando inclusive temas incómodos como la moral judicial, que es parte importante de la crisis penitenciaria. Nosotros tenemos el 78% de la población penitenciaria sin condena. Tenemos un sistema que en este momento tiene una sobrepoblación y un hacinamiento indescriptibles. Estamos violando todos los pactos de derechos humanos que hemos firmado alguna vez, y trabajamos conjuntamente sin poner un peso de más, aprovechando el apoyo, el soporte técnico y trabajando conjuntamente. Creo que estos son los goles que puede presentar el pacto, y también tengo conocimiento de primera mano de que el pacto 2.0 sigue esta línea y también toma el pilar de la anticorrupción como un elemento transversal, que gracias al trabajo que realizamos en la primera etapa, todos nos dimos cuenta que sin un esquema transversal de anticorrupción, ningún programa de lucha contra el crimen organizado puede funcionar. Y finalmente, para terminar y no pasarme el tiempo, creo importante que también con el pacto aprendimos que no podemos hablar de ninguna propuesta política, ninguna propuesta desde el Estado puede prometer eliminar o terminar con el crimen organizado. No lo ha logrado Europa, no lo ha logrado África, Asia, no lo va a lograr con esos términos América Latina ni ninguna de las Américas. Pero sí podemos decir que es una carrera de resistencia y que la única manera que podemos salir adelante es todos juntos. Ya no podemos trabajar en compartimentos estancos. El crimen es transnacional y funciona como una multinacional del crimen, entonces nosotros tenemos que funcionar desde los estados de la misma manera.
Muchas gracias, Cecilia. Y sí, efectivamente te confirmo que un poco siguiendo estos razonamientos en la nueva fase del pacto y para fortalecer aún más la relación entre crimen organizado y corrupción, se integró un pilar efectivamente dedicado al asunto de la corrupción, que está muy claramente conectada al crimen organizado. Finalmente, Claudia, tú has sido parte de distintas comisiones para la lucha a la corrupción y quería pedirte cuál ha sido tu experiencia, si estas comisiones han funcionado, cuándo han funcionado, cuál ha sido el valor añadido de estas comisiones, y gracias por contarnos.
Yeah, I can speak in English because
That's
I think
okay.
it's easier for everyone. Yes, well, I really think that the international efforts to combat corruption and organized crime are effective. And maybe before talking about the International Anti-Corruption Commission, we should talk about an international effort that has helped many countries to strengthen the institutions, and it is the European Union. You know, after the World War II, European Union was destroyed. They really didn't have strong institutions, and the United States helped them with the Marshall Plan, and they created through the economic agreements this framework that later on became really a framework of the rule of law. And even though it hasn't been able to confront all organized crime, I think it has done a lot. It has advanced in the respect of human rights, in fighting corruption, and I will think that is the region that is more stable around the world, in general terms. So we should start thinking about how the free trade agreements could help other regions. So then I also want to talk about these international anti-corruption commissions. In Latin America, we have experienced some. Guatemala was probably the first with the International Commission Against Impunity, known as CICIG, that worked in the country for 12 years. It was a hybrid mechanism backed up by the United Nations, and it helped develop a lot of grand case corruption, And the reason that ended was because they investigated one of the presidents and his family, and he decided that that was the end of CICIG. After that, the country has seen a backslash in the rule of law. It has seen, how institutions have been captured by organized crime. Right now, there are high-level judges, attorney generals that have been identified as democratic leaders, and they favor corruption. They've been sanctioned by the State Department. And when you have a country that is a failed state, that is a corrupt democracy, there is nothing that the institutions can do because they control the institutions. And that's when we really have to think about these international efforts like CICIG in Guatemala or MAXI in Honduras, that was another anti-corruption commission backed up by the Organization of American States. Later on, in El Salvador, there was an attempt to create one. When Bukele was doing his presidential campaign, he offered to create one commission like that, but it didn't happen. The same in Ecuador, the one that I was involved directly, trying to establish there a commission against corruption. But there was no political will, because I think at the end, politicians are afraid of these international and independent efforts. So just to end with the idea that was talked here before about the International Anti-Corruption Court, I think it's something that we really should think about, how an international court could confront systemic corruption in countries where there is no independence of the judiciary. Because at the end, if we would have independent judges, then we will have tools to fight corruption and organized crime. If we don't have that, we need to look for other options with the help of the international community.
Thank you very much, Claudia. I would like to ask to Christine that you mentioned the upcoming 10th session of the Conference of the State Party to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. That will include a pre-event regarding civil society forum that will discuss on the nexus between organized crime and corruption. And I would like to ask you if you could tell us something more about this event, and in addition, if these events only open to the state party or can other interested party register?
Thank you so much for that question. We're actually going to have 3 pre-session events. So we'll have a youth forum that'll bring together students, we hope, around the globe to talk about what governments should do to combat corruption. Hopefully we can harness the good ideas that come from that. We'll also have an academic symposium where we're hoping that researchers can come together as well to share how do we measure corruption? What are the latest trends in corruption, et cetera? And then there will be a civil society forum as well, where I mentioned we're hoping to have a series of panel discussions. We hope all of these events will be open to civil society, government representatives. And I think the beauty is you won't have to be accredited to the conference. We're going to have a separate registration for these events. So check out our website, cosp10.us. We'll have registration up there soon. These events are also going to be hybrid as well. So if you're not able to travel to Atlanta, you can also register and catch them online. If folks have questions about the COSP itself, you can always email us at cosp10@state.gov or follow our social media too at StateINL. We'll be putting out a lot of notices as we get closer to December. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. We are going to register on your website and see you on December. And Claudia also told us about and stressed the importance to think about this International Anti-Corruption Court. So I would like to ask to Christian if you have some suggestion also to involve the private sector, and what could be your idea of International Anti-Corruption Court.
Thank you, Lorenzo. First, let me ask, there might be some question from audience? No? Because I mean, we are panelists here, but if we're open to audience, it's even better. So since there are no questions regarding the International Anti-Corruption Court, I have to tell you, I mean, I started this story before about, let's say, my tour for 2 times around the world in last 3 months. And just in Seoul, where I flew in from, I was there with our business delegation with 2 Slovenian ministers, one of them vice president of the government. It's Tanja Fajon, our foreign minister, and the Minister for Economic Affairs. So I had a chance to ask both of them about potential initiative and their potential support for international court of anti-corruption in Slovenia. So there was, like said before, that there is, let's say, some maybe not really very comfortable position from the politicians. But in this case, I have to tell you that, okay, we have support, and let's put it straight. I mean, of course, we are talking, and it's very interesting talk and the discussion we have here. But let's put it in our documents that the initiative is here, and that definitely it's very welcomed to establish such a court in cooperation, again, not just exclusively in Slovenia, maybe with our neighbors, Italy and Austria, maybe even Croatia and Hungary. Hungary from another perspective that was a bit discussed among the lines also, the situation maybe in Hungary nowadays. But what is even more important, so I would like to underline this and conclude with this, if we go in the direction of International Court of Justice, this is the question that will be raised as a very, very important question on international level. And on the other side, if we combine, this is probably the most important thing, if we combine judges and jurists from different countries on the international level, there is definitely less chance for corruption. Because if you have a small or closer society, of course, the degree of corruption, let's say, in Slovenia is a case where 2 million of people, everyone more or less who do something know each other. So the degree of corruption, I mean, the danger of corruption is definitely higher than if you have, let's say, international judges and people that don't know each other from the beginning and they look over to each other. So definitely, again, I believe this should be the initiative for our gathering here, and congratulations to organizers again.
Thank you. Christine?
Thank you, Lorenzo, and I'm sorry for taking the floor again, but I just feel compelled to kind of respond on the other side of the debate regarding the International Criminal Court, because that's something I think that the U.S., we don't support the establishment of that. I think when we look at this issue, this challenge of prosecution, it goes back to the domestic frameworks. And as I mentioned before, we do have the UNCAC, and we recognize that I think there's a lot of implementation gaps, but we think it's more realistic to focus on those and to providing assistance to allow governments to take action domestically, and when there isn't that political will, to look at the other tools that we can harness as an international community. So I just wanted to put that marker down, given that there are still some diverse views out there, and not everyone is supportive of the court, including the United States. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's an open discussion. We have to study more and to find. Thanks you again at all the panelists. We have seen that if you want peace, we have to fight corruption. We spoke at the beginning of this panel about COVID, and corruption is like a virus. If we don't fight it, in a concerted approach among the various states, we cannot defeat. Therefore, if we want peace, we must improve our national legislation and strengthen our partnership with the public and private sector. Speaking on mottos, you have probably heard about the African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The human right to peace must be safeguarded, and that can only be achieved through law, working together and strengthening our partnership. At IILA, we are at your disposal to improve this partnership in Latin America, and we hope after today we can collaborate on this principle worldwide. Thank you again, and see you soon in Atlanta, I hope.